2 minutes late. Good evening, everybody. We're 2 minutes late. I'm being reminded by my Vice Chair, Councillor Healy. So I'd like to welcome everybody to Place Scrutiny Committee this evening. And we will start with apologies for absence. We have received apologies from Councillor Vassie with Councillor Widdowson here as substitute. Welcome. And Councillor Clark is now a member of the committee. Replacing, that's a nice welcome, and replacing our Councillor Baxter from the committee. And I'm really pleased to be in the chair. Do we have any declarations of interest from members? Councillor Wells.
I'm not sure that it is something that I should declare, but because of what we're going to be discussing, I thought I'd better mention that I do have a blue badge.
Okay. Councillor Healy.
In that case, I'm a resident of Micklegate. I don't know if that counts or not, but if we're going into blue badges.
I think that's all good. Okay. So this evening we do have public speakers registered to participate. Before we get to that, I should say that all councillors should have received a written representation from Alan Brewer, members of the York City Taxi Association, in relation to agenda item 5, the Rougier route, and that written representation will be taken into account when the committee considers that item. In that item, if there are any officers that want to respond when we get to it, then there is an opportunity to do that. Okay, thank you. So next we have got 8 registered speakers to speak at this evening's meeting, all in relation to agenda item 5. And so for public speakers, you have 3 minutes each. So I'm going to start with our remote speakers, and the first one is Flick Williams. So if Flick can hear us.
Yeah, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. So if you'd like to start, Flick.
Okay, if I cut out, would you let me know, please? Because we've had some technical difficulties when I logged on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, this report forming the basis of pre-decision scrutiny for such a major decision is wholly inadequate. It is devoid of any data, meaningful or otherwise. Where are the tabulated consultation responses? The decision to make permanent the Groves LTN was at least accompanied by spreadsheets categorising responses into objection type and reproduced the most frequently received comments. The executive receiving that is too late. The decision already made. It is data you need, members, to properly carry out your scrutiny function. This project started out with insufficient data, traffic flows monitored manually on one weekday and one Saturday, and from that all sorts of assumptions and projections have been made. Citing responses from the earlier transport strategy consultation is meaningless. Of course, everyone agrees to the broad brushstroke of better bus services. It's a leap of faith to believe this scheme will actually even do that, especially given zero additional investment by bus operators. The fundamental premise of this scheme, that bus journey times will be reduced by 3 minutes, is flawed and not evidenced. As to exemptions, 13, there is case law that supports hackney carriages as being public transport. 15, private hire vehicles. Those of us who require WAV taxis have to alternate between hackneys and private hire solely on the basis of availability. The fact you might wish to exclude Uber is entirely a problem of this authority's own making, having given them a licence despite the unambiguous position that they do not provide WAVs in this city and in blatant breach of the public sector equality duty. 14, blue badge holders. There is a singular focus on blue badge use being a reasonable adjustment only with regard to parking. This is not consistent with the exemption for blue badge holders to access the foot streets by taxi. Different conditions for different schemes is inherently discriminatory. Paragraph 21. The cost estimated at 40,000 per annum of administering a blue badge exemption is, put very simply, the cost you incur of meeting the public sector equality duty. 24. Again, where is the data? Without figures, this is meaningless. Is it perhaps a repeat of the Blue Badge Foot Street saga, where a handful of disabled people supported the exclusion of vehicles versus the postcard petition of over 3,000 people against? And still no equalities impact assessment. Disabled people have been asking for one since the transport decision session a year ago. This authority has been schooled numerous times on the need for an impact assessment to be completed at the inception of a proposal and then regularly updated as a living document. No, instead we get biased, one-sided assumption in the conclusion of this report as to which council plan priorities it purports to meet. Members, I implore you to strongly, unequivocally recommend exemptions for all locally licensed taxis and blue badge holders, without which legal challenge will follow as surely as night follows day. Thank you.
Thank you, Flick Williams. The next public speaker is Mr. Roger French. Do we have Roger French?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Right, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the York Bus Forum, which I shall refer to as YBF, and to reiterate our strong support for the proposed Rougier route. We believe this initiative is a crucial step towards creating a transport system that is more reliable, inclusive and sustainable for York's growing population and its many visitors. We believe that traffic congestion in York, where buses as well as cars are frequently delayed by congestion, is a prime deterrent to residents visiting the city centre and potentially visitors returning to the city. We believe that the Rougier route, by prioritising buses and reducing unnecessary traffic, will ensure that services run on time more often. YBF is not naive and does not expect all issues to be resolved by the Rougier route proposals. In responding to the consultation, we noted that there are other sections of the city centre bus routes in stone-wall pavement and at the north end of Piccadilly that lead to and from the Rougier route that are already bus priority corridors, but which also suffer frequent significant congestion problems. We believe that is primarily due to the absence of enforcement measures, so the volume of illegal ordinary cars using the corridors negatively impacts nearly all the bus services that the Rougier route is intended to benefit. This problem must be tackled at the same time by taking the measures outlined in our formal written response to the consultation. In the medium term, YBF believes the Rougier route proposal should be part of a more comprehensive strategy to reduce vehicle congestion across the city centre and alleviate issues at, for instance, the railway station along Boothman and onwards to and from the hospital via Jailgate and Fulford Road. Doing nothing is not an option. We recognise there will be those who object to the proposals, but frankly, none of them, as far as we are aware, have put forward positive proposals to reduce congestion, and if it is not tackled, all of those objecting will be further disadvantaged, as will bus users, by increased congestion as vehicle usage fuelled by population growth rises unabated. In summary, we fully endorse the Rougier route proposals and are willing to work positively alongside all those seeking to reduce congestion in York. Thank you.
We appreciate you joining us remotely. I think we missed maybe a moment from your last sentence.
Just do the summary. In summary, was it that?
Yes.
Yeah, in summary, we fully endorse the Rougier route proposals and are willing to work positively alongside all those seeking to reduce congestion in York.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr.
No
French.
problem. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of remote speakers. So there are a further 6 public speakers registered. So I'll just call you up in the order that I've got on my list. So next is Mr. John Iredale. If you'd like to take a seat, and the microphone button will need pressing, and then it's 3 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity to address the committee. I am chairman of the Local Residents Committee for the area of Bishop Hill, and I've been a Bishop Hill resident for 30 years. I was involved with arranging a residents meeting on the 11th of December, at which about 60 residents attended. It was a vociferous meeting. Tom Horner was present and admirably responded to the queries. The issues that arose were obviously relevant to the people of Bishop Hill, particularly the car owners, but also cyclists were present, and pedestrians and disabled people raised their concerns about the scheme. The main issues were the rat run potentially along Victor Street, but particularly with regard to taxis transiting Bishop Hill. We have no objection to taxis picking up clients in Bishop Hill, but clearly if they're using it as a rat run, that's not appropriate. We also had concerns about exit and entry into Bishop Hill. If Victor Street is, if the Victoria Bar is closed, that would cause a major problem, and nobody at that meeting of 60 people agreed to the notion that the Victoria Bar should be closed. The amended scheme allows for number plate recognition techniques, which we feel are appropriate. We welcome that. We also welcome an alternative, another number plate recognition point on the Fetter Lane area. So we think that's a beneficial thing, because there were certain individuals who were going to find it very, very difficult to get out of Trinity Lane, for example, to get to the south of the city. Overall, people felt that the scheme was a good one in terms of improving public transport. They were in favour of that. But I say there were concerns about access and egress to Bishop Hill. I think those are the main points I wish to make. The Fetter Lane chicane or obstruction has been removed. There was some confusion following some of the consultation meetings about the bollards in Bishop Hill. Some people had got the impression that the bollards were going to be removed. That's not the case, but that was not very clear at some of the meetings that were held prior to our public meeting where that was clarified. I think that's the main points I want to make. We've been assisted by Tony to a great extent, who is also a Bishop Hill resident and is obviously involved with transport matters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Iredale. Next public speaker is Ms. Robin Jankel. Hi, Robin.
Good evening, my name is Robin Jankel and I'm speaking today on behalf of the York Cycle Campaign. We are a group of 350 paying members who advocate for better cycling in York. We wish to express our support for the Rougier route, and we ask this committee to recommend it to proceed without dilution. The scheme can provide significant advantages for cyclists. These benefits include a large reduction in motor vehicle traffic, improved access and permeability, enhanced safety via lower speed limits, and better facilities where cycle routes cross pavements. The Micklegate area is a major gateway for cyclists accessing the city centre from the western and southwestern areas of York, and the proposed changes would benefit many in those areas. To the question of timing, we support a full-time bus gate for simplicity, safety at night, support for those commuting at irregular hours, and cost reduction. To the question of exemptions for various road users, we urge the Council to reserve the bus gate for buses, cycles, and emergency vehicles. Allowing more traffic through the bus gate would dilute the scheme, discourage residents from switching to bus or active travel, and make those still driving drivers cause more traffic elsewhere. To the question of reduced speed limits, we support the immediate introduction of a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit as part of the trial for the core area of the scheme. It is necessary to ensure safety for those outside of cars because wider lanes, one-way traffic flow, and less congestion all encourage higher vehicle speeds. For some people here today, the changes represent an inconvenience of some pence here or a minute there. For cyclists and pedestrians, however, the changes promise better physical safety. Department for Transport road safety data catalogues 81 car drivers striking pedestrians in the Micklegate and Bishop Hill areas since 1999. Victims range from an 83-year-old man to a 5-year-old girl. Taxi drivers have killed 2 pedestrians. For cycling, the DFT reports 73 car drivers striking cyclists in the same timeframe. It is within this council's power to dramatically reduce these deaths and collisions. We urge the council to prioritise the safety of active travellers over the convenience of motorists by delivering the scheme without dilution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms Jankel. Next public speaker is Mr Anthony May. Professor, please. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of York Civic Trust, and I wanted to say that we very strongly support the Council's proposal for the Rougier route, and we're pleased to see that it's attracted a majority support from respondents to the survey. It, as the report indicates, will significantly improve bus journeys. It will also make for a safer environment for walkers and cyclists. Another of our major supports for this is that it provides a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for improving public realm, particularly in the historic axis of Micklegate and Ouse Bridge. And the Civic Trust stands ready to help the Council in realising those improvements and would like to see those implemented from the outset. We have a few comments on the report. The first and the only really critical one is we don't understand why introducing a 20-mile-an-hour zone is now a longer-term project. It appears in your November 2024 implementation plan as a short-term measure to be implemented on the same timescale as the Rougier route. The section of road that is currently 30 miles an hour is pretty well freestanding, so it can be treated separately from the rest of the city centre. Our main concern is there's ample evidence that if you create one-way streets, as in Toft Green and Micklegate, you encourage speeding. So a 20-mile-an-hour zone really is needed from the outset to avoid Micklegate becoming a more dangerous environment. On balance, we support the inclusion of hackney carriages as permitted vehicles. We would be concerned, though, about extending that to private hire vehicles, simply because that substantially increases the traffic flow and negates a lot of the benefits. We agree with the conclusion that blue badge holders should be permitted only where this constitutes a reasonable adjustment, and we anticipate that this will principally be for people living and working close to the scheme. We did note there's nothing in the report about hours of operation. It was a question in the consultation. Our own view is that having a scheme that operates from early morning to late evening would be the best option because it protects bus services throughout their hours of operation and it supports the nighttime economy. So we very much hope that you will support this scheme in your scrutiny of it and that you can take on board the comments I've made. If I've got a moment, just a very quick comment on item 6, which reviews the local transport strategy and rightly refers to the Mayor's local transport plan, which is under development at the moment. We, from what we've seen early on, are quite worried that that's not really reflecting the Council's priorities, particularly for movement and place. And we suggest it might be helpful for this committee to have a review of the local transport plan as it is being developed at a subsequent meeting. But that's purely a suggestion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Professor May. Our next public speaker is Mr. Andy Dugon. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you. I'm here on behalf of York Green Party, and a lot of what has just been said I will be repeating. There was no collusion, but it seems as though a lot of our views are common. Firstly, I would like to vote just to correct one very confusing typo in the report, paragraph B. of the background says, well, it should make clear that 72% of respondents to a previous consultation had agreed or strongly agreed with dedicated bus priority routes. I think the word agreed got dropped out of the original question that was asked. Secondly, on speed issue, even with contraflow cycling, the one-way diversion loop will tend to speed up traffic. So I do agree that it is vital that this loop should be made a 20-mile-an-hour limit as part of the trial, regardless of whatever is done longer term for the bus corridor itself. And this will be even more important if taxis are excluded from the bus gate, given the level of taxi traffic in the area, which would then be forced to use that route. Thirdly, I like to restate my consultation response, which hasn't got mentioned in the report, which is that the short section of Tanner Road between the NCP car park exit and Rougier Street should, I believe, remain two-way so that the traffic that's exiting from the car park is not forced to travel an extra half a mile around the loop, with probably speeding as they do so, or else worse, to nip out across the private land at the front of Grand Hotel just out here. Fourthly, I agree that hackney carriages should be exempt from restrictions. If, however, it's decided that private hire and blue badge drivers are to be restricted, there's also a stronger case for the hours of operation being more or less along the lines that Professor May referred to, 7 AM to 7 PM or something like that, so as to facilitate evening access for hospitality and nightclubs in the area, whilst limiting the delays to buses during the daytime. If, however, the scheme is made 24/7, I think that there's another issue which needs addressing, that is the HMV gates by Spurrygate Centre, which need to be closed at night and therefore only open between 6 and 10:30 in the morning for loading. Otherwise, Coney Street will become a busy alternative route, evening route for general traffic, and taxis are not allowed through the bus gate. And finally, I should say that this scheme is a very welcome, vital measure to rescue our struggling bus services, even though it has taken a long time to reach this stage. And no doubt, obviously the views of local residents do need to be taken into account. And hopefully that has been a benefit of that additional time reaching this point.
Thank you, Andy. Our next speaker is Ms. Janice Gray. Okay.
Good evening. I thought I was coming merely as an observer. I wasn't aware that I was down to speak, but having been given the chance, I would just like to say that I think the consultation, November, December, was a bad time to put that out because there were more hold-ups due to the two lots of four-way traffic lights, and that backed up everything. It's a bit clearer now with the traffic, and it's only really busy first thing in the morning and an evening. The rest of the time, it's empty as Rougier Street. So, and I was also mooted the idea of reopening Micklegate to both ways of traffic, but I don't think that will happen. I'm thinking of years ago when there was less traffic about. So really, and I think there'll be obviously more traffic going down Nunnery Lane. It'll all be forced onto Nunnery Lane, onto Skeldgate, so I don't think there's much to choose between what you want to do and the rest of the traffic on there. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. And our final public speaker is Mr. Arshad Mahmood.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Chair, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm speaking today as chairman of the York City Taxi Association, representing York Hackney Trade and many residents who rely on taxis every day. We understand and support council's aim to improve bus reliability and reduce congestion. However, this proposal risks creating new problems while trying to solve another. Closing Rougier Street to most traffic will divert around 7,000 journeys a day onto already busy routes like Skeldergate, Nunnery Lane, and Bishopthorpe Road. That means more congestion elsewhere, longer journey times, and higher costs. For taxi passengers, this is not theoretical. It's immediate and measurable. A typical journey from St. Xavier Gate to the station currently costs around £5.80. Under these changes, the same journey is expected to rise to approximately £10.40, with additional 15 to 20 minutes added to the journey time. That's an increase of £5 to £6 per trip, a significant burden, especially for regular users, the elderly and those with mobility challenges. Hackney carriage taxis are not just traffic. We are a key part of York's public transport system. We provide accessible travel, we support those who cannot rely on the buses, and we help reduce private car use with many of our Hackney taxis are fully electric or low-emission plug-in hybrids. Your own analysis recognizes that Hackney carriages depend heavily on this route, and that allowing them through busgate would have minimal impact on bus journey times. There is also a proven model. Leeds City Council already allows Hackney carriages through bus gates, and it works efficiently without compromising the bus performance. We are not asking for you to abandon the scheme. We are asking for a balanced and practical solution and allow Hackney carriages, wheelchair accessible Hackney carriage vehicles, to continue using Rougier Street. This would protect accessibility, prevent excessive fare increases, and reduce unnecessary journey delays, while still achieving your wider transport goals. It is also important to remember, while many support better buses, only a minority say they will definitely switch to using them. That means taxis will remain essential. So this is about a balance. A transport system must work for everyone, not just for one mode. Work with taxi trade, not against it. Adopt these sensible exemptions, and you can improve buses without disadvantaging the people who depend on us the most. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mahmood. Okay. So that's the end of our public participation section. I'd just like to place on record thanks to everybody taking the time to come and speak to us this evening. It is really important, and I know that all your views will be taken into account by the committee and also by residents and other elected members that will be watching and listening this debate as well. So I'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the minutes of the last meeting. All members have seen those minutes? Yes, Councillor Hook.
Yeah, I've just got a query on paragraph 24 because I don't understand the last sentence.
Okay, last sentence. Could you just explain where we're at?
It's paragraph 24, public participation. It ends, she also stated that she felt the committee more meetings to ensure areas such as parking. So there's obviously some missing words.
We'll have to consult the notes. It's a small amendment,
Yeah.
but we can get it right.
Yeah,
James?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think
Gwen would tell you her speech as well.
yeah, I think it's a couple of missing words. I think from memory it would have been something along the lines of felt the committee should hold more meetings.
Yeah.
I can go back and check the note if you would prefer that.
Any other points from the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Hook. We will revise the wording on that final paragraph. And the next agenda item is the one that everybody's spoken at in public participation. So it's the local transport strategy. No, it's not. It's the Rougier route. Item 5, improving bus reliability in York City Centre strategy 2026-2031. I'd like to invite participants, executive member, Councillor Revelius, Tom Horner. Do we have Gary Taylor? Not this evening, that's okay. To join the table. So this item is for pre-decision scrutiny ahead of consideration by the executive, and it follows a recent consultation on the proposals. For the committee, we're asked to provide views on the report that we've seen, which includes potential exemptions, ways of addressing the issues highlighted by Bishop Hill and Micklegate residents and businesses. And that's to enable our views as scrutiny members to inform the recommendation that is made to executive. I would like to ask Tom, would you like to present the report to us, please?
Yes, happy to do a quick introduction. Good evening, councillors, and thanks to all the public speakers for their comments. It's very valuable as always. So we've been developing the proposals off the back of the bus service improvement plan, funding allocation to improve bus priority through York City Centre. We've got to the point where we held a full public consultation from 19th of November last year through to the 12th of January this year. So we extended that due to that Christmas period because we acknowledge it's not ideal for everybody. We learned an awful lot. It was very useful. Had some incredibly helpful discussions with a lot of people. So I really do thank everyone who engaged with the process and came out to speak to us. So we've got off the back of that consultation, there's sort of 5 key considerations really that we've identified in terms of taking the project forward and firming up any sort of recommendation for executive. The first one is around an exemption for hackney carriages. So we're not sort of wedded to a particular proposal. The purpose of the consultation was very much to identify what people's views were and any issues around it. So we did go out with a sort of preferred option, which was effectively the maximum bus benefit option, so that people could then comment. And then we've subsequently had an awful lot of useful conversations off the back of that with stakeholders. So in terms of the hackney carriage providers, we met them in the spring, summer and had an early conversation with them, and then had a follow-up meeting on the 5th of December to fully understand the needs. It really came out strongly the potential impact of not exempting hackney carriages through the bus gate, particularly on the Spurrier Gate to York Station route, and there's some really significant positives with allowing hackneys through the bus gate, as has been articulated. We spoke with York Access Forum in the summer and again in the consultation period, and got a strong steer that they would like to see blue badge holders allowed through the bus gate. We also engaged with other disabled groups as part of the consultation. We heard an awful lot how bus reliability really does affect people, in particular when there's significant delays. It brings more uncertainty into people's lives around getting the bus, and some people just don't undertake the journey at all. It was really quite interesting to hear, and quite sad in some cases. We've then got private hire taxis that we need to make a decision on. We had conversations with them again in the summer and on the 4th of December. So we've had that chat. There's some particular implications there for send contracts that CYC operates in terms of potential extended journey times. And then we had a number of drop-in events in the Bishop Hill area and kindly facilitated by the Bishop Hill Action Group, which I think John's articulated better than I will in a summary. But essentially, yeah, the critical issues were around how we enable resident access through Victoria Bar. So we've revised the proposals, and we're suggesting that we retain the resident-only exemption through Victoria Bar, but we bring in AMPR to properly enforce that and minimise any risk of through traffic in the area. And then we also heard from a lot of people in the Micklegate area in particular, where the proposals without any sort of exemption or change for them would potentially increase the number of journeys across the front of the rail station and increase the number of miles that they would have to travel. So we've sought to revise the design in a way that brings in a potential local AMPR gate on Fetter Lane, which will mean that people in the Micklegate area can go south into Bishop Hill. And we propose to effectively look at a permit-based scheme based on the res park areas in place there. And there would be other opportunities for, if people needed taxis accessing the site there, or if people have blue badges in the area, where we could allow exemptions. So we're working on the process in the back office for how to enable that. That will then reduce any additional trips around the station and on Nunnery Lane and enable local people to access the area more effectively. So that's where we've kind of gone, and we're still sort of undertaking the design work and finalising sort of the detail of what we're able to do, which is why this report is perhaps slightly more fluffy than you might ideally like, but we wanted to make sure we got the views in ahead of any further decision. We did include the option of 20 miles an hour on the corridor. The reason why we pushed it to a later date and acknowledging the points that Professor May rightly made around the way things can travel is that you would effectively, without considering the city centre, you would have to sign the city centre at 30 mile an hour at next Nestgate Corner, which just it doesn't seem something we would want to do. We need to look at that holistically across the city centre and how it dovetails with the corridor. There may be something we can do specifically regarding the proposed one-way sections on Tanner Road, Toft Green and Micklegate potentially. So we'll certainly take a look at that. Last point before I will shut up in a second. If we're going to progress the project, I do need to strongly emphasise that the proposal here is to bring it in on an experimental basis for 18 months, because the only real way you fully understand the impact of something quite significant and changing traffic circulation as this is to try it out on street. So if I was sat here and I'd spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on revising traffic models, collecting widespread data, to give a full appraisal of what we think might happen, it really wouldn't be proportionate to the cost of the funding that we have and the ability to trial it. So what we have done is we've done some snapshot data sets, updated our strategic traffic model, run that to get an indication of, does it gridlock anywhere? Does it pose a really significant impact? And it hasn't done, which is why we've then brought the proposal forward. And the next step is to really give it a trial with the right exemptions in. We can tweak those exemptions and conditions during that experimental period, but we deliver a full monitoring plan, get cameras in place to understand where vehicles have been redistributed to, and that then enables us to make a firm decision. We've got really strong backing through the big transport conversation, accepting it was slightly a while ago, but it's really important, the principle of us putting the right level of bus priority in to ensure that people can have confidence in the buses in the city and start to use them to the maximum level, because as we all know, with the housing growth that we have at City of York and that of North Yorkshire and other neighbouring authorities, if we can't move more trips onto bus, then we really do risk significant congestion impact. And the first stage of that we see is making sure that the busiest bus corridor in the city has significant priority. Just one last point with regard to the sort of 3-minute journey time saving. So we've established that through working with bus operators. Some of the work we've done has been with Transdev, who've identified through York City Centre on their coastliner route. Since 2019, they've had to add in an extra 6 minutes of journey time, just in terms of traffic growth and the way that the Traffic Commissioner starts to monitor bus services. So by getting as close to free flow levels as we possibly can, making that journey as reliable as possible, the bus operators don't then have to plan for the worst case scenario, which means when you're sat on a bus and it's just stuck at a stop and it's going nowhere, you should really be able to get that timetable much nicer and tighter. So it's through work with the bus operators. I think potentially in some cases it might be a pessimistic 3 minutes, but if you put that 3-minute journey time saving across every passenger on each one of those 1,000 plus buses on the corridor, there could be a really significant saving. And as part of an experimental trial of this idea, we would obviously monitor that with the bus operators and understand what sort of benefit could be generated. And particularly some of the other initiatives we have in, such as the bus loop at the station, which will stop certain services having to loop round Nunnery Lane and come back up. We do expect there to be potential opportunities for bus operators to start investing in services, because they'll have more confidence in being able to run through York efficiently and reliably. Sorry, that wasn't the quickest update, but happy to take any questions from members.
It's really useful, Tom. Thank you so much for presenting the report. And so over to members. I'm happy to take questions, comments and discussion. And I'll go to first hand I saw, Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tom, for this report and for your updates. A lot of the concerns raised from a public participation point of view, and to be honest, a lot of the concerns I had reading this was the discussion around blue badge access. So we know that that's incredibly important for the city, particularly from a qualities point of view, also to make sure that we can ensure that everyone gets to enjoy York. I understand that there are the issues around a blue badge is ascribed to a person rather than to a vehicle specifically, but surely there can be some consideration made for the need that people with blue badges have to access the city centre. I'd just like to understand where the cost of £40,000 came from, and if you could talk a bit more about from an equalities perspective for disabled access, how do we ensure that this scheme supports all residents?
So I suppose the key thing is the level of change and what the impact is on street effectively in some respects. So what will happen is there'll be certain places where you will start a journey. If you wanted to go, for instance, from Lehman Road to the new proposed blue badge parking at Castle, your natural route would be straight down Rougier Street and through. So in which case, under these conditions with no exemption, you would have to go across the station frontage down Nunnery Lane and round and back in. So you can still get to everywhere, every blue badge bay, every loading bay. You can still get to that as the scheme is designed. It is just a difference in routing. So if you were coming down Tadcaster Road, for instance, and similarly, if you were coming in and you were going to go to that new blue badge car park at Castle, instead of going straight through Micklegate Bar and down and through, you would have to go down Nunnery Lane and round. So you can still get there. You're absolutely correct. It's a blue badge is issued to a person. Other areas that have implemented a similar type of thing, it's tended to be for local access. So Oxford, for instance, they're more around making sure there's a reasonable adjustment in place for people who need local access rather than sort of through access like this. But you effectively produce a process and a system for applying for an exemption, and you would have to allow people around 4 or 5 potential vehicles or something like that. And we have heard from people who they certainly need to change rental cars frequently and things like that. So we'd need to just effectively design a process. The cost comes from getting a new member of staff in to administer that process because we don't have anything set up. And we've effectively put an indicative 40k on it because it would be a proportionate amount of staff because we may need further staff in to administer other exemptions relating to this project. So that's effectively, it just needs a new process for York designing and administering were it to be an exemption.
Supplementary to that, Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Chair. Aren't we creating a similar system for the introduction of ANPR to allow blue badge holders into the city centre? Can we just piggyback off that?
There's definitely opportunity for it to come together with that, absolutely. But we've put the indicative cost in as associated with this scheme. But yeah, I can refine that and work with the team that's looking at the HVM to see if there's some efficiencies there.
Okay, Councillor Hook.
It's okay, I'm not precious. Well, thank you. No, I'm just interested because the report doesn't seem to have that much concrete information in it. We're just crying out for some more information. And so I wondered, what were your results? And I don't know if Councillor Villiers has seen them. What are your results for work done to assess the effect of the diverted traffic onto bottlenecks? Because the diverted traffic at the times of bus services. I'm thinking of all buses, not those just going through Rougier Street, but because I'm thinking of bottlenecks like the front of the station, the Queen Street, Blossom Street, Nunnery Lane junction, Nunnery Lane and the one-way system from Bishey Road, and even the end of Skeldergate when you want to turn left at the end of that to get onto the bridge. This affects all the buses as well. And if, as we'd seen from the taxi people, that the congestion already will put the price of taxis up, presumably it would delay buses as well when they have to go that way. And then another subject on road safety. Everyone said it would be wonderful because it'd be safe for Micklegate Bar. Has anyone thought about the effect on Bishey Road? Has anyone thought about the effect on Scarcroft Road? Both quite nasty areas and lots of people walking around. Because all the traffic from the west of the town will be going that way in order to miss the Rougier Street.
So on the latter, that any casualty data will be part of a monitoring process. So we'd have to understand that as part of any changes. So it will be something, we get that data from North Yorkshire Police regularly, and we'd keep a watching brief on that. In terms of the alternate routes, so the modelling work we've undertaken is predicting that the primary alternate route that people will be taking will be Nunnery Lane, Bishopgate Street, Skeldergate Bridge. The station loop in time will give us an opportunity to take off quite a lot of bus trips off the Nunnery Lane leg. So the East Yorkshire service, or the East Yorkshire services currently have to run down there to turn round. There's some opportunities with the university service for those not to have to run down there. We need to get the balance right, because we don't just want to take all park and rides and things off Nunnery Lane. We need to make sure there's a provision at the stop on there for the Bishopthorpe Road area. We published an indicative sort of figure of increased journey time as part of the consultation, which was around 90 seconds between Tower Street through to Blossom Street extra, is what we've identified, and that's come from our strategic modelling. So again, until you try this, you won't know for sure. We've got a strategic model. We've done some indicative modelling. We've put all the numbers in place. We expect there to be some what we call mode shift away from vehicle use onto buses and onto active travel as a result of the proposals. We don't know the level of that until we try something like this. So that's the sort of indicative work at the moment that we've got.
Okay. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. I've got loads of questions. Some of them have already been picked up, but I'll open with a few and then leave it if that's all right. I just want to start by saying I'm very much in the camp of saying doing nothing is not an option. I think that's actually an irresponsible policy position, but I still think what's in front of us needs a bit more refining. And if this is meant to be pre-decision scrutiny, I'm quite concerned about the lack of detail in this. If that modelling's been done, and I know it has been, I believe you, Tom, it should be in the papers, amongst other things. We've got the 2 surveys on 2 different days in the week. It's not much to go off. I just think it's quite strange. I even checked the Constitution to see if there was any way of challenging it, but I don't think there actually is in the Constitution. So anyway, and if the 40k per annum figure is purely indicative, then again, that undermines this decision. I don't think for a second we need a new staff member to monitor ANPR registrations every year moving forward. There'll be a load of work in the initial year or two, but once it's up and running, that should be merged with other functions, as Councillor Healy's touched on. I know it's only an indicative figure, but if it's just an indicative figure, it shouldn't be used as a material argument against allowing the blue badge exemption. But anyway, I'll get on to my questions. The first one is, lots of consultations have gone on, a lot of work's gone on behind the local transport plan and this, but I'm just curious as to which response we should put more weight on. So the paper we've been given touches on section 1B, how in the big transport conversation, 72% agreed or strongly agreed. When asked to what extent they did, no, sorry, 1A, yeah, 79% said they would or maybe would use buses more often if we introduce priority routes for buses and sustainable transport. But in the consultation for this that's been shared, that figure is lower and the consensus is less clear. So it's one of the annexes, Chair. I don't know if you need me to name it, I will. I'm just trying to get my notes up in front of me. But in that consultation, the answer to that question was yes and maybe was 58%, and no and maybe was 59%. So my question is simply, which one matters more?
It's an interesting question.
Shake your head all you like. I've got every right to ask these questions, Mr. Gentleman in the public. Carry on, Tom.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. Yeah. So I think and feel free to come back on me if I'm being unfair here. I think it's easy. I think it's sometimes easy for people to say yes, something's a good idea if it's at that strategic early stage and you're not aware of like the detailed implications. So I would typically expect a drop off when there are some people as a result of the proposals, particularly in Bishop Hill, that maybe felt negatively impacted by what was happening, and then there are other people now. We're starting to put an actual project in front of someone where you can see what people will look at that and say, okay, I can't drive down the bottom end of Micklegate anymore. So I would expect it to drop off. I'm actually quite encouraged, considering it's quite a controversial measure to put a bus gate in, that we still have around 58% of respondents saying that they either would or maybe would use buses more as a result of putting bus priority in, because that translates potentially quite significantly into bus patronage uptake. For something quite significant like this, where you are asking people to change how they move around the city, I would have actually expected, if I'm honest, I would have expected quite a negative response. I'm really encouraged, in fact, by the fact that people really understand and appreciate the need for bus priority to get buses running more efficiently around the city. So I'm relatively encouraged. I don't think this is a 51% saying yes, 49% say no, we don't do it type of situation. I think this is, as someone as you rightly mentioned actually before, not doing anything isn't really an option with where the growth in the city is going and the potential increase in demand of vehicle trips. If we can't get buses running reliably, then it's not going to be an option for a lot of people. So I thought I would bring both of those factors in, but I was quite encouraged by the latter result.
Fair enough. My next question for me, Chair. I had a few to get off, and then I'll be quiet for a bit. And I've asked this question privately to yourself. Councillor Villiers was copied in, a few other officers were. I think I asked it last week or the week before, but I think it's worth the public knowing. When I first saw this, my first question is this going to be worth the hassle? Have any of these bus companies, who we are rightly choosing to prioritise, going to give the city's people back anything in return? So what commitments have we got, be them vague commitments or solid commitments, that they're going to invest more, even if it's just 15% more in bus services as a result of us giving them first dibs on this important city centre asset? What commitments do we have from the bus companies?
I haven't got anything in writing from them at this point in time, but I do expect should the trial be successful for buses, I mean, that's key. We expect it to be based on the data we've got, but it needs to work for them. I expect them to be able to start investing in their services. I think there's some options where we could potentially increase frequencies because it's quicker to get around York. I think if patronage starts to increase, then it will turn some services from single deckers to double deckers and get more vehicles in and more seats on. We might go from the smaller buses on some of our tendered services to full single deckers. There's opportunities for Arriva to run the 415 up to the station to give a connection to the Selby villages into York Station, because they don't currently run up there at the moment because it puts too much delay into the service. So I do think it'll be forthcoming, and I'll certainly speak to operators to try and get some assurance around that, but I haven't got anything in writing, if I'm honest, at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. It's a really good question. So I've got a few people wanting to come in on that as supplementaries, including the executive member, who I'll invite first and then go around. But I just want to do a clarification point about pre-decision scrutiny. It's an important point that Councillor Taylor raises, and I need to correct the public record. I didn't introduce this item as pre-decision scrutiny. That was the intention for this committee, but it isn't pre-decision scrutiny, as it is not. Right. As Councillor Taylor rightly pointed out, you would expect more in the report back for that. So it's an important point, and I'm glad you raised it, and that is clarification. It's not pre-decision scrutiny. Okay. Councillor Revelis, and then I'll go to a couple of members that want supplementaries on that.
Yeah, thank you. And just to say, we had hoped that we would be able to, in a position to have pre-decision, but as you can see, it's complex and there are more questions that we need to answer, but we still thought it was really useful to come and get that feedback from you now on this scheme. Just on bus companies investing in more routes and better services in York. Again, we haven't got anything in writing, but we are starting to see bus companies recognising potential. So we've got East Yorkshire who have recently introduced a Sunday service from Bishopthorpe, and that's been really successful. So they're now about to introduce a service through the week. So I think there are bus companies who are there and willing to step into places when they can see there's opportunities. And if this scheme, as we hope, goes forward and is successful, I would think bus companies would want to take that opportunity.
Councillor Fenton on this?
Yeah, just in terms of bus reliability, which obviously this is the key driver of the scheme. Certainly talking to colleagues and residents, they immediately think, but my bus doesn't use that route. So the question is, what will happen to the number 1 and the number 5, which are very, very busy and popular services that don't use the Rougier route. Tommy, you mentioned the analysis has been done. I'll repeat the point. It would be helpful for us to see that, because that would enable us to answer the questions that that come our way. But in your discussions with, well, First, as the operator of the 1 and 5, have they expressed any concern around potential knock-on impacts on the reliability of the 1 and 5?
No, not at this stage. We do talk regularly with all operators through the enhanced partnership and through general conversations, but the modelling isn't showing any sort of increase on Lendal Bridge. It's the Nunnery Lane corridor that's getting the majority of the extra impact, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to, because there'll be less traffic going into Rougier streets, we're hopeful that we'll be able to amend signal timings and things and make that network work better, and hopefully the front of the station will have significantly improved operation as well as part of the station gateway works. We definitely need to keep an eye on the Queen Street, Blossom Street junction, as you rightly mentioned. There's a extra traffic going through there. There may be some opportunities to amend signal timings around that. But that's one of the things that we'd absolutely have to keep an eye on through the monitoring of the project if it were to go forward.
Councillor Healy.
Thank you very much, Chair. One question to the officer and a supplementary question to the cabinet member. The increase in patronage that you mentioned that might result from this, could you give us some indication what the modelling suggests that may be?
We haven't modelled in detail. It's more, we've done more in terms of the traffic redistribution to make sure there'll be no negative impact on the network. The uplift in patronage, I think it'll come from a few things, and it's hard to sort of aggregate exactly what impact this particular project would have in isolation, because we've got other things happening in the next year, like the fare cap commitment only goes up until the end of March next year, for instance, on the £3 fare, so that could well influence what happens with patronage. So there's a number of things we'll have to put into play. The short answer, I suppose, is I don't know exactly what it'll be.
That's fine.
But we'll work with operators and we'll look to see if there's been any uptick as we would expect as part of it. Typically, all the sort of elasticity models that you have strong positive correlations with reliability and improvements and journey time reductions.
Okay, thank you. This is to the cabinet member. You mentioned East Yorkshire putting on a Sunday service from Bishopthorpe. Was that the result of Luke Charter's lobbying, as I believe that's something he's been calling for?
I think that was one element, but it was also that they realised that residents were asking for that. They'd heard from a lot of residents and they recognised that there was a demand. So I think bus companies respond to when they see there's a demand and when they see there's an opportunity. And we're starting to see that in the city, that there's that response to recognising what people want and how people want to travel.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Widdowson, you probably indicated first, but I'd love to bring you in now.
Oh, don't worry about it. Anyway, it was a last minute sub, so
Thank you for letting me speak. I'd just like to really echo what Councillor Taylor said. The lack of detail in this report is really concerning. And as somebody coming in without whatever the background is from this committee, I genuinely struggled to understand what decisions you were trying to get me to make, because there isn't enough information. From what you've said tonight, Tom, could you clarify? I've got a few questions, if that's okay. Could you clarify how the exemptions for the Bishop Hill area, Fetter Lane, Victor Street and all that area will work, considering people will have friends, guests, cars that change, care workers? I know people that already use Fetter Lane to go into the churches at the top there. How will that work?
So the local exemptions we anticipate would work off the back of the Res Park scheme, which has visitor permits and everything else in the area. So there's 2 Res Park zones that are impacted by this, and we would primarily run the project through that because it's all electronic. It can be tied into our systems. There will be need potentially for additional exemptions off the back of that, potentially for business owners in the Micklegate area and other special requirements that people might have. You can still get to the churches, but you would have to go, if you didn't have an exemption, you would either have to come through Micklegate Bar or come through Rougier Street to access it.
And have you had conversations with Lady Anne Middleton to understand if their guests get fined, what's going to happen there? I mean, I just think that's a bit of a hornet's nest.
There's a lot of work we need to do if this proceeds in terms of working with local businesses. There's hotels in the area, making sure that everyone's got clear understanding of how guests need to travel to the area. We've got people in the team that work with the sat nav providers, Google, to make sure that any traffic regulation orders are appropriately mapped onto electronic systems. That's for anyone coming to the parking or something like that. You were or whatever it's, sorry, not called that anymore, is it? But they would the sat nav would be able to tell them that they wouldn't be able to go through that short section of Micklegate and down George Hudson Street southbound. So there's alternative routes to everywhere you need to go. The only sections that we are proposing to make part of the bus gate, the short section on Micklegate in both directions between George Hudson Street, Micklegate Junction, and the Skeldgate Micklegate Junction, and then George Hudson Street southbound. So that means you can still get to all the different locations where you would park in that area. The key reason why we're seeking to amend the project to enable residents of Bishop Hill and the Micklegate area to get between around the bus gate is because that would have resulted in additional trips and significantly extra journey time for those local residents. For people accessing services on Micklegate and in that area, there are alternatives, and we will work with relevant businesses. We're talking to them. Anyone that's impacted on the route, we've been done detailed consultation.
I hear that. I just think that is going to require a serious amount of detail, especially when people live there and they've got friends, carers, whatever coming in. So I just wanted that bit highlighted.
Yeah.
How long, my second question to you is, it's a trial for 18 months. If it's really working really, really well, or it's bombing, or it's somewhere in between, what are the checkpoints in terms of, would you let it run for 18 months? If it needs serious tweaks, would you say absolutely it's working brilliantly, we need to implement it now? What's the thinking behind that?
I think the first review point would be probably 6 months in. I think you want to have a look and let habits embed and let people sort of change how they travel and different routing patterns to develop, and people to start using the bus and cycling and walking more, hopefully. So I think after 6 months in, we'd start to have a good indication of what was happening. There is the opportunity to change exemptions and tweak the order as part of that 18-month period. So what goes into start doesn't need to be the final design, and yet we can make it permanent sooner than the 18-month period. That's absolutely fine. If all the data's going brilliantly and we all like it, then that's certainly possible.
Right, and my last question, if I'm allowed.
I've got supplementaries on that. So is it linked to it?
Nope.
Can I come back to you, Councillor Widdowson? That's great. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair. Apologies, Councillor Woodison. It was really a question because about the AMPR and particularly around taxi access through Victor Bower and Victoria Street, I think. The resident earlier mentioned about taxis kind of rat running that way, and whether how do you differentiate between those that are legitimately picking up people and those that are not? Is there a sorry, it's getting too into the detail of the sort of technicalities of it, but that was my question.
No, and this is the stage we're at now, and this is, and I do appreciate that. It's about the proper nuts and bolts of the project and what it means to people living in the area and accessing businesses and services in that area. So I would envisage that Victoria Bar would remain resident only. So if you're getting a taxi into the area, you would come either over Rouge Bridge and down Skeldergate and in, or you would come in off Bishopgate Street and into Skeldergate. So there's potential exemptions for taxis, blue badge holders, and the main bus gate, if you like, on Micklegate and George Hudson Street. But I would see the Fetter Lane proposals and the Victoria Bar to be resident only.
Okay, Councillor Healy on that one.
Thank you. It's about the trial, picking up on that. What's the cost of this day one compared to the full implementation cost? Because I understand day one, you're going to be marking things out using paint, and then at the end of it, you'll use the rest of the budget to then essentially build out the hard infrastructure, the hard changes.
I think, well, there's a number of different routes we can take. The preferred route that we have as officers at the moment is that we implement on a fairly sort of skeleton basis. So in case things need to change, or if ultimately it doesn't work, we use bolt down curbs and the like, and planters and things to sort of look at how we delineate between new parking bays and what one way Micklegate might look like for businesses. So we can do some work with the community there to get it looking nice but not permanent. Then it can be, if it has to be, it can be pulled out. But then ultimately, yeah, it would need some investment if it was successful and to be brought in permanently to properly do all the curbing and really make it look right and invest in the area. So the idea would be that we would dovetail that with a regeneration place-based project in the Micklegate area that starts to look at that Micklegate route through to the city centre and invests into that further through Combined Authority local transport grant. That would be one way of doing it. So you implement it fairly light touch to start, and then if it's popular, you do it properly and go in and bring it in as a wider project.
Can I just quickly come back on that? So the current budget is to do the light touch, and then you'd have to come back and find more budget to do the hard final reimagining changes. Is that correct?
Yeah, ultimately. But I mean, we'll do it in a way that it'll be implemented in a way that it doesn't obviously look terrible. I mean, it's a really important part of the city, so we need to get it working right. But the aspiration would be to keep it fairly light touch to start, and that's what the bus service improvement plan funding would do.
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to bring in Councillor Whitcroft, please.
Thank you. Yeah, it was sort of touching on the same theme, wasn't quite supplementary, but when it comes to the decisions around to provide for Hackney carriages an exemption and private hire vehicles an exemption, are there any legal, would it be seen as sort of discriminating between the two? Would there be, because as has been pointed out, Uber's got a license here, private cars of hire, taxis have got a license here. Are we legally able to just say Hackney carriages yes and other ones no, or is there any issue there?
We're getting legal advice to confirm this, so that's part of the reason why there's further detail to come in as we get that. But Leeds do allow Hackneys, but not private hire routinely.
Just on this, then, Councillor Wells.
It was just on the taxi issue, so apologies, Councillor.
Yeah.
Have you done separate consultations? Because here it's saying that 15% of the current weekday traffic on Rougier Street route is both Hackney and private hire. but you don't think that the Hackney carriages are going to make any much impact on bus times, etc. But I don't understand how that decision's been made.
Well, it's effectively because the 15% of taxi flow shouldn't significantly adversely affect bus flow through there. So as a whole, so effectively, we don't expect it to. We wouldn't expect it to change the sort of free flow ability of the junctions and change the junction capacity. It's the through traffic that we think is holding the buses up at the moment. If you cut that traffic right down, then it means buses can still get through the junctions quickly.
But the 15% isn't just Hackney's; it's both private hire and so. I don't understand why we're separating them if we haven't separated them in how we've looked at them before.
It's mainly because the survey data captures taxis entirely, so it gives us that rounded figure. You could allow either or. Once you get to 15%, you are increasing the number of vehicles going through there. But in terms of the actual impact on the junctions within the corridor, it's not likely to be highly significant on bus flow.
Thank you. Councillor Aviles, do you want to come in here? I've got a supplementary from Councillor Clark.
I was just going to quickly say I did ask for some extra data from Dave Cowley, our taxi officer, around the proportion of Hackney and private hire, which might be helpful. So we have 189 Hackney carriages registered to the authority and 392 private hire vehicles. And then in addition to that, there are obviously taxis coming from outside of the area. So what the objectives of the scheme, as well as improving bus reliability and the service time, we also want, one of the objectives of the scheme is to improve the comfort of the environment for walking and cycling. And the more that you're able to reduce the traffic flow on that corridor, the more comfortable it becomes for walking and cycling. So looking at those levels, and we can't say exactly what proportion of that 15% is Hackney and what's private hire and what's out of town, but just judging by the proportion that we've got registered at the local authority, you've got 1/3 Hackney, 2/3 private hire, and then of course there's going to be a chunk of out of town. So if you just allowed Hackney through, you've reduced that 15% to 5% or less of the traffic. So it's just looking at it in terms of the amount of traffic and what reduction you can achieve.
Thanks, Jen. Look, these are my questions. It's about the modelling of the differentiation between Hackneys and private hires. That's been answered. Thank you.
It's been answered. Okay, so where we're at, members, is that it's really useful discussion, and I know everyone wants to jump in. Is it a supplementary, councillor? I have got you on my list, so I'm going to be transparent at this point and say I've got Councillor Healy, then Councillor Fenton, and then we're going to go back round again. I've got Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Widdowson. Okay, so Councillor Healy.
Thank you. I'll keep this to a few questions, and can you add me back onto the bottom of the list? Firstly, could you just address the point that ex-councillor de Gorn, I almost called you a councillor there, sorry, Andy. I'm sure he will be. Sorry to see you go, Conrad. There will be an incentive now to go down Coney Street, turn left, go over Lendal Bridge to sort of cut off that square, two sides of that square. How do you intend to address that?
When you go left, oh sorry. So coming out of Lendal, you'd have to turn left and go around the gyrator anyway.
No.
Oh, if you go into the station, okay.
So this is the other direction. This would be, you're on the west side of Skeldergate Bridge. You can either come along Bishopgate, along Nunnery Lane to the station. You can't go over Ousbridge anymore because the bus gate exists, but you could just go straight down Coney Street and then straight down Lendal Bridge. No, it's a left turn. And people ignore that anyway.
If you're on the west side of Skeldergate Bridge, aren't you just going to go up Nunnery Lane and?
No, you're on the east side. of
Oh,
Skeldergate
the
Bridge.
east side of
Yeah.
Skeldergate Bridge.
So
Potentially.
in order to avoid Nunnery Lane, which can get very busy, and you're pushing a load more traffic down there anyway, because this closes off that Ouse route, you could scoot down
You could,
Coney Street.
potentially. I don't think. I mean,
I'll leave it with you to think about, because obviously this is new.
Yeah.
No one else has picked it up apart from.
Yeah, it was raised in public participation by Andy Degon, councillor Revelius.
I was just going to say, I mean, you can only drive down Coney Street outside of Foot Street hours. So you're talking about outside of Foot Street hours, which then brings us to the question of, we're asking for views on the hours that the bus gate would operate on. So this scenario that you're posing would only be a scenario if the bus gate operates 24/7. And so, yes, it's a scenario then that would need to be considered. But if the bus gate operated the same hours as the Coppergate one, then it wouldn't be a scenario at all, because there would be no incentive at night time any more than there is at the moment.
If you could pick it up when you take the papers to exec, I think it would be really useful. Anyway, I've got loads more questions. Next one, which I'll just pop in. I'm very glad to hear this is not pre-decision scrutiny. Can we just confirm that the things like the impact assessment, the consultation full report, will be all included in the papers that go to executive? Also around that consultation, it would be really interesting if you broke out the feedback from people directly affected, as opposed to just answer to this consultation. And also on the consultation, apart from the text box at the end, there's nowhere for people to say, I just don't want this.
I'll double check on. I'll have to double check with my communications colleagues on that one. But I think we have wrapped up all that information, and it's in train to provide a detailed report to the company. We've given a summary as part of this meeting, but there'll be a full report ahead of executive.
Yeah, that's important to know. Councillor Ely, shall I move on? Come back to you.
Yeah, come back to me. I don't want to hold up the other questions.
Right, okay. Councillor Taylor. Oh, no, I'm really sorry, Councillor Taylor. We haven't heard from Councillor Fenton. Go.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the questions that are raised around taxis, both Hackney, private hire, and blue badges, I think for when the next iteration of the report, if I were making a decision, I'd want to understand. I want to see it in a wider context in terms of how the bus lanes in York work, in terms of access for Hackney carriages. There's a mention of Leeds. I'm just conscious that whatever decision is taken in regard to this scheme, we're mindful of potentially the question rising. So what does that mean for other routes where it could be considered a reasonable adjustment for blue badge holders, for example, to have access to a route that would enable them to get to their destination more quickly than would otherwise be the case. So I would caution against looking at this purely in isolation. I'm sure you wouldn't do that anyway, because I think it is important that we can almost go back to first principles in terms of the purpose of this scheme and what's the tipping point in terms of considering exemptions. But I think it will be important to consider the wider context of York and how other transport routes operate for that group of road users. So that's really just a request that it's kind of set out in broader context.
Yeah, I'll take it on board. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go back round the table, and I will start with Councillor Taylor. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So just a couple of questions, and they're linked for me. we've got the estimated percentage of the sort of taxis as a block around 15%, albeit based on a limited sort of study. It's probably trickier to, well, it is trickier to do this visually, but what would be the estimated percent for blue badge holders?
Yeah, I don't have any data. I'd expect it to be very small.
Okay. I mean, appreciate that being admitted, but I think that's quite critical to this in the context of impact, what the thresholds are. If it's very small, it'll be a percentage of a percentage. I think that's something for members to think about. But tied to that, you responded to Councillor Healy about the impact assessment, and you said you'll get a more detailed report at executive. Will that have specifically an equalities impact assessment? And how can that be made if we don't have a reasonable figure for the blue badge percentage?
You can't, I don't think the impact, well, the percentage of people travelling it through that corridor with a blue badge, it's impossible to distinguish from a survey effectively. But what we'd be more looking at is the impact on the actual end user there. So we have got a human rights and equity analysis in train. It's been developed, so it's worked up. This consultation was designed to help inform that and get some actual data, which was why we had specific questions for blue badge holders as to what the impact would be on them. That will then naturally inform. We've done plenty of engagement that will inform that outcome. So the key thing I don't think is, in terms of the actual likely number of users, the impact on the bus flow is likely to be minimal. The impact on the end user is the sort of equivalent journey time change for them getting from A to B, not using George Hudson Street southbound and Micklegate versus them doing that. So there's some journey pairings where it might have absolutely minimal impact on blue badge holders because it's not likely to affect you as much if you're coming up from Fulford, say, or the north, but there'll be some then in your ward in the Lehman Road area. If there are people accessing town, they will need to come through there, and they will typically use that to access the city centre potentially. So it's that impact that's key, and it's the extra journey time that we won't know fully until it's been tried, of going round the front of the station around Nunnery Lane. That's the sort of effectively, what is that impact significant enough for us to need to bring in a process to allow blue badge holders to register their badge and get vehicles through there. And that's what the HREA will measure on that impact on the person.
Okay, can I bring Councillor Wells in on this?
Will that part, the impact part, also consider private hire vehicles who are send children to school, and the impact that has on their journey time and everything, and how they react? And because I know that sometimes children and young people are agitated in the transport, and so is that going to be considered?
Get a short answer from me for once on this one. Absolutely, yes.
Councillor Taylor, would you like to do your next?
No, move on. I might come back, Chair.
Councillor Widdowson, please.
Comment, Tom. You've done loads of work. There's obviously lots and lots of information that's not in this report. Right, and there's lots of modelling and there's lots of stuff that we'd like to know. There's also lots and lots of holes where you've said we don't have that information, we do have this information. So, Councillor Aurelius, do you think that this report that you've put in front of us has got enough information for us to make an informed decision from?
No, because this isn't a pre-decision scrutiny. So
I understand that, but you've brought it to us to have a discussion, and there's so many holes in it, it's really difficult to actually do anything with.
So the idea was we wanted to bring you something because I thought it would be good to have that cross-party steer on what questions you would like us to go away and still find out the answers to, and also just a steer on some of those key questions like blue badge access, in terms of the principle, understanding what your feelings are, in terms of the hours in which it operates, what you think is right for the city. So I know there are questions that still need to be asked, and we still need to go and do that bit of research. And it is a complex scheme, but rather than just waiting till the very end and then saying, here's all the information, it's better to have that ongoing conversation where everyone gets the opportunity cross-party to feed in. So it's just an honest conversation, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and just I would add from my part as chair, just trying to set out the work plan. I really did want this item to come forward to committee in any form, and so in a discussion form, I was really pleased that we could get an opportunity to discuss it. Did anybody have a follow up from Councillor Widdowson there, Councillor Hook?
So will we actually get that information to make another scrutiny or not? Or is it just going away elsewhere?
So at the current state is we're going to take away whatever questions Scrutiny would like us to go and gain more information on. As you can see, there's still a lot of information we need to look into. It's currently scheduled to come to executive in May, but it depends how long it takes us to gather that information, and whether Scrutiny wants to advise that you'd like it to come back again. So we're open and listening to that.
Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. I think as a committee member, I'd be comfortable with this coming back, provided what we had back matched or was a very close match to whatever the executive end up deciding on. Because when the space is too big between the two, you're sort of in the same place. But I guess that's up for executive and officers to work out. Sorry, more of a comment than a question.
That's welcome. Yep, Councillor Healy.
Thanks very much, Chair. I've only got 3 questions now, but some of them will be very, very quick. I think consideration 4, you would just be using new tech to replace in essence, the rising bollard. I would suggest that you're going to get very little pushback on that, given the fact that you've already done all of the work previously to justify the rising bollard to allow that just for residents, because you do get rat running on there. That's more of an observation than a question, sorry. So 2 questions. One that should be fairly easy to answer. With respect to the station frontage project and with respect to the Lendal Bridge repairs, what's the timetable for implementation of this project? That's question 1, and then I've got one more.
So if this was to be approved, we'd be looking to implement it on site in the autumn.
So autumn 26, and it runs for 18 months. So Lendal Bridge then wouldn't. When would you start Lendal Bridge repairs?
I would have to check on that with the highways team. I haven't got that detail with me.
Okay, because the Lendal Bridge repairs are ongoing at any point in time in the future. Can you have this project?
Well, I would envisage you would effectively bag the signage off, and you would postpone the bus gate operation while the Lendal Bridge was closed.
Okay. That's the first question. Second question is on consideration 5. Given you're now putting ANPR at the bottom, I presume it's going to be at the bottom of Fetter Lane. Does that mean that the bollards and restricted access on St Martin's Lane then gets removed from the scheme?
We weren't, yes, that were proposed originally, yeah.
I will feed that back to the residents of St Martin's Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. Okay, I think I would like to then move us on. I've got one question, I think, because most of what I've got here is already asked. Could I ask about modelling? I know you've done snapshot and only very limited at this stage, but do you have any modelling about journeys around the ring road? So currently using Rougier Street to get through town. Do you see anything significant for changing behaviour that accesses the ring road?
Yeah, just to be clear on the snapshot. So the strategic model that we have has an enormous amount of data in it, and it gives us a good indication of different flows across the city. What we've done is we took the snapshot just to do a sense check to make sure that those flows were accurate. So it's more about making sure we've uplifted things to current data. So the model is comprehensive. It covers the entire city. It's strategic in nature, so it looks at trips between different zones on the network, rather than doing what we would call a micro simulation, which would cost a lot of money, and doing it across the entire city centre would be really expensive. That's the sort of modelling you might see where you get little CGI cars driving through junctions and it adapts behaviour. So we've done it at that strategic level. There are definitely some trips starting to use the A64 as a result of this in the modelling. So there's trips, for instance, if you I did a Google search a couple of weeks ago just to sort of get a bit more of a handle on this. And if you route from Poppleton Road, for instance, through to Fulford Road, it takes you straight through the middle of town, through Micklegate, across Ouse Bridge and down Tower Street and onto Fulford Road. So those types of journeys, it is starting to shift. There's a definite evidence just from putting some of these origin destination pairings into Google that we just have through traffic going through the city centre that isn't adding any value to it.
Thank you for your answer. And I guess my final question then would be about private hire taxis and the send transport to school. You mentioned in the report that you've already done some work on that with the contractor that the council has. So I guess at this stage, you'd be able to go away and do some more detailed work on that to understand exactly how many trips are being taken using that route. So at this stage, would you be able to say what type of number? I'd presume it's quite low, but my principle would be that those pupils should come first and an assessment of their needs be met properly. And so I just wonder if you know the ballpark of what we're looking at.
I haven't got a definite number to hand on it, but that's work we are doing with our education colleagues. There's journeys from Fulford to Manor School, for instance, and things like that typically go through there.
Okay, thank you. Members, in wrapping up this part of the agenda, I think we had a really good discussion, and as mentioned, I do welcome the opportunity for us to do that, and it's up to officers and the executive member on how we are involved further, whether it goes straight to exec or whether there's opportunity for us to see the recommendations to executive beforehand. But either way, at this stage, is there anything else that committee members want to add for the record, for us to make as either a recommendation or any further work required? Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. So we're all right to make recommendations, yeah? Thank you. Based on the papers we've got and what we've heard, I would like the committee to recommend that both sets of taxis and blue badges are given an exemption based on the fact that the combined taxi figure is minimal, and we think the blue badge figure is minimal, but we don't even have the data for that. And I do think that matters. And if this is a trial, I'll be much more comfortable with the trial starting off with all three of those groups in, And then if it does prove to be the case that, for instance, the numbers of blue badge vehicles in this area are somehow ruining the movement of buses or holding them up disproportionately, then let's have the conversation again with a more informed perspective. But until we get that information, and look, given the fact that the companies aren't investing more anyway, not yet, I accept that might come, and that the numbers we're talking about are minimal in the grand scheme of things, we're probably still talking about at least 60% fewer vehicles going through the area of concern, possibly at least 70%. I just think if we don't include those three, then it's a hell of a lot of hassle and harm for minimal gain. And I know people get excited about the bus reliability, but the services that we have are average at best. Them being on time more and a little bit faster is very welcome, but it's not getting me overly excited enough to justify squeezing those three groups out, or even any one of them. So that's why I suggest those three exemptions. We definitely need a proper equalities impact assessment for executive, and as much data as possible for executive. And then what happens after that, whether it comes back to scrutiny or whatever, remains to be seen.
Okay, thank you. Right, well. So you made two recommendations there, Councillor Taylor, and maybe a third one that I'm going to quash, although like it on the record, which is about equalities impact assessment. Because can I check that the human rights and equity analysis is the equalities impact assessment?
Name for it.
Yeah, and that will obviously be going to the executive as part of this decision.
Yeah, 100%. This whole consultation, we needed more data to develop a thorough assessment to be able to put in front of the decision makers. So
as expected. So that's okay. So we got a lot of hands here. I'd maybe like to invite people to discuss what Councillor Taylor proposed, or is that okay? Or if there's further proposals to add, I can come to you after, but I'd like to deal with these two, which are namely that both private hire and hackneys get an exemption. So the committee could note that as a steer or as a recommendation, depends how you'd like to word it. And the second one is that there are exemptions for all blue badge holders. Okay, because that is a departure from what we've got in the papers as consideration. So I'm going to make that clear to members. Councillor Healy, do you want to come in first?
Yes. I'd just like to tweak Callum's suggestions. I'd say that hackney carriages consideration 1 and private hire taxis consideration 15 initially, and not upon request, you take the hackney carriages licensed in York and the private hire taxis hired in York. I don't have any knowledge or consideration about how you would do taxis licensed outside of York.
Yeah.
But given that there's hundreds of thousands as opposed to 500, I would suggest that would meet the objective of Callum. Same with blue badge holders. If a blue badge holder applies for access into the city centre, we just automatically give them access to this. So it means that you don't have to have two schemes with additional cost, because the cost for the city centre access for blue badge holders for ANPR, it's already been budgeted for. So that's my tweaks to Callum.
Are they tweaks, or were you just further clarifying?
Tweak clarification.
Okay. Any further members want to discuss those? Councillor Widdowson.
I'm not sure you can do either of those things, the recommendations, because I genuinely think that there's not enough information, not enough data to make any of those decisions. We don't know what the number of taxis are. We don't know what the number of private hires are. We don't know the number of blue badges. We think they're minimal. So I absolutely agree with the sentiment, but I would be loath to make any recommendation till I saw some proper data. And that's what really concerns me. And if you want it as a bus gate, which is what the whole scheme is about, you want it as a bus gate, or do you want it so that this car can go through, that car can go through, this delivery vehicle can go through, that delivery vehicle can't go through. I don't know the numbers of the vehicles, so I really am struggling with this report. So I don't know about the recommendations because I have no data to underline it by. If we go back a long way for why people use buses, the number one is cost, the second one is reliability, and the third one is frequency. So again, going back to how we've asked this consultation and gone through these questions, I'm really unsure what you can or you can't say. What I'd love to see, and I know I'm not a full member of this committee, I'd like to see this again, because I don't think you can say anything about it because it is so light on information.
I think it's a fair point. I'll do Councillor Whitcroft and then Councillor Fenton.
I was just going to say, I do appreciate your point, Councillor Widdowson, and we do want more information to be able to decide this. I think in terms of what the committee is expected to decide today, I think we can set a statement of intent. We've taken the officer's point of view, we've asked them loads of questions. I think we can take that advice for the decision that we can make today in terms of a recommendation. I think Councillor Taylor's recommendation set the right direction for what we as a committee want, or it's certainly what I want. I think we can do that with the understanding that if further information comes forward and there's too many blue badge holders or whatever it may be, we can reevaluate that decision. The executive can do that. I think for now on this committee, we need to set our intent. And in my point of view, both types of taxis and blue badge holders, I think that's something I feel very comfortable saying with the information in front of me.
Okay, Councillor Fenton, did you want to come in on there?
Just to repeat the point I made earlier in terms of looking at these recommendations in the context of how the road network in York operates in terms of who has access to bus lanes. How do we decide the Coppergate bus lane has different rules compared to other bus lanes? So on the basis of the information that is in front of me, whilst there's nothing in me that thinks I'm in principle in disagreement with what's being recommended. I can't, in all honesty, put my hand up and say, yeah, I'm happy to go with that recommendation, because the information that would allow me to make an informed recommendation just isn't here.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Welcome the comments back, especially Councillor Whitcroft's. I think if I can clarify my thinking, it was more, I'm working on the basis of, not to say you aren't, but I'm trying to be politically real and the world we're in and the city we're in. If this is going to happen anyway, and it's a trial, I would rather the trial starts with the most progressive, pragmatic approach, with those people still allowed access, rather than a trial that begins with the most severe approach with those three groups not in. And if, as the trial progresses and we have the extra information and the monitoring pointers in one direction or another, then we can tighten it if we need to. So for the very fact that we don't have more information is why I feel even more comfortable than I already was arguing for those three exemptions. I think it's more pragmatic. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Wells.
I'm not comfortable making a decision at this stage. I have a great deal of sympathy with what Councillor Healy said, that we should maybe be looking at private hire for York licences, but I'm not sure how whether or not that's a feasible option. I would hate to think that children that we've got a private hire cab for are having to travel a lot further. And so from that point of view, I'm very sympathetic to that. I'm not sympathetic to a lot of the private hire companies from out of York. And again, I'm sympathetic to the Hackney, but I don't know how we would be able to distinguish between them.
I think that's a really good point, Councillor Wells, and one that I do support. I can see Hackneys as being classed as public transport, and to extend it further to private hire taxis, I don't know the legality of including on or discounting the ones that aren't licensed in York. But before I finish that point and bring Councillor Taylor in, again, what Councillor Wells has said about the send school to transport contract, I think that is really important to include, and yeah, and that's obviously a private hire contract, so that's a tweak on that Councillor Wells rightly points out. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. Just on the private hire and Hackney issue, as I don't know if it was raised tonight, but I think it's worth keeping in mind that, as far as I'm aware, disabled residents have to alternate using both those forms of taxi. So if we only went one and not both, that there's a real impact there too, because they have to alternate due to the lack of available accessible vehicles. Sorry if that's teaching everyone how to suck eggs.
No, it's a good point. Councillor Hook.
Given that Uber's got a license now, I don't think you can really separate the two out because you've already got a huge fleet of people with a license in York anyway. So to get out ones that aren't out in town is hardly going to tickle it.
Councillor Healy.
We can't ask the office again, or you may wish to. The statistics you have here on taxis, I would hazard a guess that that's based on those licensed in York. Because if you think about it, how would we determine from the activities that have started, that have happened prior to this paper, determine the Hackney cabs and taxis across the United Kingdom / England? Legally, I'm not really too sure. So, you know, picking up Councillor Wells's point, I think we're going to really struggle to give a recommendation that is in any way practical or legal, because I think we're just all guessing.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to move us on here, and I think you're right. The 15% is going to include York's figures. Have you got?
So it's a survey on street that's been undertaken. So it's anything with a plate on it basically distinguishes between a taxi or not. So it's an actual traffic count.
That's very good to know. Okay, I know that there's some say lack of support just based on availability of information at this stage, which I think is warranted. Totally agree with that. I'm not even going to go back and give my view on the whole thing because I just want to deal with this point. I am sensing that the committee would be happy to make some recommendation or make a note at this stage that suggests an exemption for both Hackney private hire and Blue Badge to be considered. Is that fair? Councillor Fenton.
I think that's what's going to happen anyway. We've heard there is active consideration, so I wouldn't want to say do not, stop any work you're doing to consider the exemptions for those three groups. I think, as we've argued, that aside from the practical difficulties of implementing it, I think we're all agreed that we can see a basis on which you would consider, and officers are considering those three groups. So I certainly wouldn't tell officers to stop doing that work. But that's quite different from recommending, you know, stop the work we have a settled view, because I don't think we do. Well, I don't.
But the wording that I raised, could we just could we phrase it to say that the committee discussed the report in detail, asking questions of officers and executive member, and highlighted these 3 areas for further consideration or special consideration? Because then it shows that it's important to us as a committee, and we're trying to highlight that. Councillor Healy.
If you are going to use that form of words, I'd also like it to apply to consideration 4 and consideration 5. The reason I say that is I would not like the officers and the executive member to go away and think that we were not supportive of 4 and 5. So if we are going to go down the route of the committee supporting recommendations, as a resident of Bishop Hill, I would want to reflect their opinions.
No, I think you're well within your rights, Councillor Healy. I'd like to separate them. Okay, this is, I think, what I'd like to do is put a set of wording forward to deal with the one issue that we've just been discussed. I'm happy to come back to your point just raised as a second point that the committee could agree on. Are we happy to go forward? I can repeat what I've said if that's helpful. Or do you want to debate that further, Councillor Widdowson?
Can I ask you a quick question? Is it worth asking the officer, is it under consideration now? And if it is under consideration, all those 3 areas, you don't need to put it in as a separate recommendation.
I think Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. There's a very different outcome here to saying carry on considering this, and we would like you to give these exemptions, notwithstanding the trial, more information. There is a distinct difference there, hence why I've made it. I just don't want to accidentally find ourselves giving a fairly neutral statement when I don't think this is a neutral statement. Thanks. Thanks again, Ben. I'll shut up.
Okay, I'm going to read something out, and then we'll come to Councillor Healy for what I'd consider a separate point that the committee can consider. So the committee asks for special consideration to be given to exemptions for private hire taxi vehicles, hackney carriage taxi vehicles, and for blue badge holders. Councillor Widdowson.
Is that also, if you're going to do that, you're also picking up the point from Councillor Fenton and making sure that it fits in with all the other rules, with all the other bus routes on either the Mount or Coppergate or wherever else, so that we're not confusing people. So that you've not made one special set of rules for that bit, but then you don't know what happens in the others. Just so that that is considered within it, so it's consistent.
I'm not sure that I don't. I think we've got a statement and we either support it or we don't. I don't know how an amendment to it that talks about the wider area works, unless somebody can help me with that. I've put something down and yeah, Councillor Fenton.
Yeah, I've made the point. It's up to officers to consider how they take into account the broader context. I don't propose to add it to the form of words that you've set out.
Tom.
I'm more than happy to put something together in the context of the other bus lanes and bus gates in the city, if that helps as an officer commitment to address that.
Okay. All right, I'm going to ask for approval of this sentence that I've read out. Do members want to vote on it? Or do you just want to nod to me? I mean, I'd be happy to take a hand in the air vote. I'm happy to nod. Right, I've got it. I mean, I don't want to coerce a nod, but unless people, nobody's spoken against it, and so I don't feel like I need to do a hand in the air. I know we've talked around it, so okay, the committee agrees that then. Okay, the second point, Councillor Healy, I think you're quite right to raise consideration 4, which is paragraph 27, consideration 5, which is 29. Could you just go back to what you'd like the committee to agree?
Given that I think officers and the executive member have pretty much agreed that those two things are going to happen as part of the scheme, I am comfortable to include it or not include it, as I feel that there was a feeling in the committee that they don't want to use the same form of words to recommend 16 and 17 as well.
So you want in the committee to express support for consideration 4 and consideration 5?
At this time of the evening, I don't really mind.
Okay. Does anybody got any strong views, or can I get a nod on that again? Councillor Whitcroft.
Yeah, it is that time of the evening. You're right, Councillor Lee, but I have some slightly strong views about that. I don't think that was necessarily within the scope of what was discussed here. I think the main focus for us, we want to be able to make sure we prioritise hackney carriages, want to make sure we look at the private hire and the blue badge issue. When it comes to private car ownership and the access for individual private cars, I think that's going to have to be a part of a wider consideration about how we handle car access in the city centre for people who fall outside of blue badge, and then of course the private hire. I also think we need to sort of consider declarations of interest made at the start of the meeting, and we need to think a little bit about the representations that came to us from Bishop Hill residents as well. I think that just needs to be managed in a slightly different way than providing representation or recommendation from this committee. I think the main focus for us should have been on private, on the 3 that we put forward. I don't necessarily think that we need to think about the other considerations personally.
I don't want to get into a long debate on this. Councillor Healy, can we withdraw it? What do you feel like doing here?
These two considerations were only on here because of the representations of the people it directly affects in Bishop Hill, and from the consultation events that I attended, which I'm not too sure if anyone else around the committee attended. So if we don't want to include it, fine. If we do want to include it, fine. But this scheme does have quite a major impact on this part of the city, which is the reason why consideration 4 and 5 are in this paper, because they weren't in the original scheme.
Yeah. I think it's really important we take residents with us, and I'm really pleased to see the amendments to get to this stage. But I think I'm just going to call it there and adjourn the meeting and end this agenda item. Councillor Hook, you really want to come in? Yeah, go for it.
Based on my question, I really want us, well, the final assessment of success, whether it's a good scheme or not, to look at the whole effect on bus times throughout the routes, all routes, and also to make sure we don't export road safety problems out of Micklegate into other places, and make sure that you deal with the road safety issues that might raise there because you've got more cars there. So we just got to think of the wider picture and the end game as well as actual things listed on there for consideration.
Yeah, I think that's a good point made. Okay, I am going to end that agenda item at that point. I think we had a really good discussion. I want to thank Tom for coming along. Councillor Avelius, thank you for your answers as well and the work that you've put into it. You got really good discussion from us here, and we look forward to the progress of this item, of course, and how we can further be involved in the work. We'll take 5 minutes and then we've got to get through the rest of the agenda much faster than that. Okay, thank you. And we are back. Okay. Thank you, members. I would say thank you for all your contributions and consideration of the Rougier route item for discussion. And note that we had to have that longer discussion. It's absolutely worth it. And so I hope you're all happy with how that went from the chair. Okay. And I will bring us on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 6. It's the local transport strategy update. We received an agenda supplement for this item, and I'm expecting Joshua to introduce it. Could I hand over there?
Hi everyone. Just before I introduce the report, just one point of correction I've noticed in this. Under point 2, background and approach accessibility, we make a statement in there that says more inclusive cycle parking has recently been installed at Blake Street, and has recently should read as is currently, as that project has not yet concluded. So just wanted to clarify that. So this update seeks to provide delivery progress against work streams identified in the local transport strategy, as well as acknowledging some of the challenges that the authority has faced in getting those programmes off the ground, and detailing out the future of the local transport strategy following the creation of North Yorkshire Combined Authority. So I won't go through every single item of update, but in terms of some of the areas where progress has been made that's been really positive is in the introduction of real-time information screens that are able to fully output audio descriptions, either through push buttons or QR codes at 127 of our bus stop sites, as well as a wider programme of bus stop accessibility improvements, which includes changing curbs, seats, shelters. Moving further down the list, we've secured funding of 1.9 million in the 25-26 local transport grant with the Mayoral Combined Authority that covers projects to introduce secure cycle storage, school streets, speed reduction measures, sustainable neighbourhood improvements, active travel route enhancements, and pedestrian crossing facilities, with these projects to commence this financial year. Moving on to the emerging issues section of the update, which talks through in more detail the change in the future of the local transport strategy whilst we're working with North Yorkshire Combined Authority. Just to set out that myself and Tom, our teams are both working with the Combined Authority to develop a multi-year programme that takes us from 26-27 all the way to 29-30, and that 4-year settlement really gives us that full foresight pipeline and ability to commit to more detailed and more enhanced corridor projects. North Yorkshire have given us the headlines to apportion this funding as active travel, bus access and punctuality, rail stations, road safety and congestion reduction, and integrated corridor and place schemes. And they've also provided a statement which I've referenced in the report, but just to highlight one element of that statement is that whilst North Yorkshire are producing their own local transport plan, which will be a statutory document, they recognise the York local transport strategy is already very well developed and will form a key part of that transport plan, and which we'll all have opportunity to input into, and as that develops, as well as residents as part of statutory consultation. So moving on to the challenges area that we've mentioned, the key areas have been in delivery resource. I can say, speaking from experience, my team didn't exist at the start of the LTS. Where that's a way of which, and we're trying to mitigate that by having a dedicated transport capital projects function. And we've just gone through some additional recruitment to that, and we're looking at bolstering that area even further. Additional to that is what we term the client resource in here, which is our ability to take the concept ideas from the concept into feasibility, getting that robust data, that modelling, and all the things we need to support that becoming a meaningful and impactful project. And that's something that we're working on in bolstering up in Tom's area of work as well. The other challenge, as we all know, the creation of the combined authority midway through did lead to some elements of disruption in that we went from having money directly ported straight from DFT to us working with the combined authority, establishing what their outcomes framework is going to look like and how we then bid to gain those external grants. So what we'd like to ask from Scrutiny today is to consider the format and frequency of future updates on the local transport strategy and its implementation, given the information that we've set out already.
Thank you so much for introducing the item, Joshua, and for particularly the points about combined authority being created midway through what the City of York Local Authority were trying to develop and achieve. I think this item was requested by committee members on our work plan before I was a committee member, likely at the meeting before September last year. So we got it on the work plan. Grateful for the report. I'll ask a question first, then I'll open it up because that way I get to ask one and it doesn't get asked. So I would like to ask about the movement and place strategy, movement and place plan. If you could give us any updates or information on that, that would be really helpful.
Yep, so the movement and place plan tender is now live. So we've got interested parties all in the process of bidding for that as part of a procurement exercise. Following the conclusion of that procurement exercise, we'd expect to be able to provide a programme of what the ongoing activities will involve in movement in place and then developing that as the plan emerges.
And a timeline for when that might be delivered / published.
As the tender is live at the moment, I believe we'd be looking at the sort of next 3 months to conclude that tender process, but I can follow up with exact confirmation of a timeline from procurement colleagues.
So on this, Councillor Widdowson.
Just follow up,
Yeah.
sorry. God, I'm not sure when I am or not allowed to speak now, so apologies. Just following up from what the chair said, pleased to hear that the tender will be finished in 3 months. When are we going to see it, and what is likely to be in it, and what actions do you think are going to come from it? Is it going to be 6 months after, 3 months after?
So that really links back into the multi-year settlement with the combined authority, and the way that we are working with the combined authority is that in towards the back end of that 4-year period, we would have the outputs of movement in place in terms of deliverable projects, because we expect them to be more significant. So we've back end loaded those into our profile at the moment to account for that in that 4-year settlement.
So help me. 4-year settlement starts.
Yes.
So the 4-year settlement starts now. So the activity from it is going to be in 2030.
27, 28, right through to 29, 30. Yeah. So we expect the outputs of the movement in place plan to be turned into underground deliverable projects by that point in the 4-year settlement.
Okay. Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Fenton.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for the report. Welcome again to the council. I think you're fairly new. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and I've had a promotion as of this meeting. I'm just a point of correction. I'm not the head of city development. I'm the head of transport projects. But thank you very much.
So just 2 questions because I have to dash shortly, I'm afraid. First question is, I see that there's investment in project teams, which is great, much needed to help schemes progress. But given that the combined authority is hopefully starting to settle, are there any sort of natural capacity gains that we're getting from them finding their feet and us having to do less hand-holding? And if that makes sense. And my second question is about future reporting. Do you think it'd be possible for all these different schemes and issues listed, if we can get like just a progress tracker for each one? So design stage, planning if necessary, spades in the ground kind of thing. Do you think that could be doable?
So in answer to the first point, I think as the combined authority matures and its processes are better developed and understood, we can naturally align our resources to work in that smoother pattern. Instead, in some instances where at present and in the past 12 months, we may have been more reactive, which naturally results in that resource then not being able to plan for the future. So I would say yes, in answer to your question, that as those processes are in place, our resources should be able to focus then on delivering to match that. Again, in answer to the second point, I think definitely take that suggestion on board as a way of presenting progress against the LTS to this and other groups.
Councillor Taylor, do you have any further? I'd be happy to take them now. Yep, thank you. Councillor Fenton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I went back to the local transport strategy implementation plan, which was agreed before you were in post in November 2024. That was set out in quite a sort of easy to understand way in terms of listing the projects, indicating is a project financed? Yes, no, partially. What we've got here is it picks up some of those elements, but doesn't really move us forward in terms of, as Councillor Taylor said, sort of a progression planner, a plan setting out progress. For example, this report talks about dial and ride study has been commissioned. Okay. And it begs lots of questions in terms of access barriers. A certain number have been removed, but others have been identified. What's the prioritisation? Councillors were asked some time ago in terms of did we have priority barriers that we wanted to see removed. I suggested some, heard nothing back. So there's lots of good stuff here, but it raises lots of questions. And rather than officers spend all of their time answering questions from councillors, if we're provided with information that gives us the answers and provides a greater degree of transparency on the delivery of some of these schemes, or an explanation as to why some haven't been taken forward. For example, freight, which was a short-term commitment in the implementation plan, hasn't moved forward because of officer resource. I don't doubt that. It's just if we can have more detail and more transparency so we can see that progress, and then we're asking questions by exception rather than constantly me emailing officers saying the bollards on the revival estate that we discussed in early 2023, what's happening? Because then officers just drown in individual questions about individual locations from all of us. So this is a good start, but if we can build on it, then that would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely. From my end, that's exactly where I'd like to get to as well. And we're looking at evolving our programme management office processes to be able to capture all that information and again, be able to display that to all the people that need to see it.
Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Chair. Only two questions, should be really easy to answer. What makes an inclusive cycle parking / accessible cycle parking different than what I would see around the city normally?
I will. So it's mostly around the space that's available around the cycle parking. So normally, typical cycle parking stands are sort of stacked to accommodate the size of the bicycle themselves and either side. This area has got a lot more dedicated room to it, and it's a build out in the curb.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I may have missed this. When do you expect to be complete the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority Local Transport Plan that you reference in Emerging Issues Point 4?
So I'll have to refer to the quote that was given to us in that. I believe the term that was used.
Currently being developed.
Currently being developed at pace in the second paragraph, and we are seeing a significant amount of movement in all areas with the combined authority over the last sort of 2 to 3 months, as they've now got their resources built in. They've got their new director of transport in. They've got their transport programme manager in. So we are seeing that pace, but I have not got a timeline for that as of yet.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Whitcroft.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the report. I just want to ask specifically on the Castle Gateway project, and there is now planning permission for the removal of the Castle car park as well. In terms of how that impacts, well, an update on the project would be appreciated, but also on how that's going to impact how we see travel around the city in particular, and what preparations are being done for that as we see the removal of the car park there.
So I can speak to that in terms of my team's elements in that. The Castle scheme falls under a different team in city development, which we can get a formal update from on that. In terms of work that's being done around that, as part of Castle Car Park, there are a series of measures being looked at in terms of alternative parking arrangements. The key preference being that we improve facilities outside the city at our park and ride sites and introduce overnight parking at our park and ride sites. We're looking at the operational strategy for how that might work. Appreciating that it's not a completely attractive option for everyone, but it's something to explore. In addition to that, I know that team at the Castle and I scheme are looking at Coppergate car park as well as and improvements to there to make additional provisions, accepting that there'll be some redistribution across the city for parking.
Thank you. Just going back one, Councillor Healy, the local transport plan combined authority, it says that a draft will be ready in May. It'll be consulted on over summer, and then a final agreed local transport plan this year. That's the timeline. I think that's what you asked. Yeah, May in draft, then for consultation. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Joshua, for the report. So mine's quite a specific question, and it comes up in Guildhall quite a lot. It kind of builds on really what Councillor Fenton mentioned before. That's just the barriers to access. So I think in this current year it's 80, and then another 3 years, so that's maybe 240, 300. I understand there's actually something like 800 to 1,000 barriers, so that means there's some being left over. Just how are they kind of prioritised, as Councillor Fenton mentioned, and what's going on there?
Yeah, so that will definitely represent a programme that I think has been slower to get off the ground due to the resource issues that we've had. The 80 that we reference in this update is a snapshot as of this update being produced. The team that are working on that are looking at ramping up as much as possible. So we expect those numbers to go into the hundreds, if not 200s in a single year. However, that still doesn't satisfy the fact that there may well be over 1,000 of these in the city. So whilst we will be doing as many as we can with the funding that we've got available, we anticipate that any left over, we may look to seek additional funding and a continued programme to remove. But our intent is to tackle as many as we feasibly can. Acknowledging as well that not every single site is the same. Some are incredibly complex. So in terms of the priority, there is a balance to be found between where areas attract a level of footfall, where they would perceivably gain the most benefit by removing the barrier to access, but also in terms of if focusing on that one means that we are delaying 25 others, we've got to strike that balance with the volume that we've got.
Just to follow, is the plan still to remove all of them then, or will some still remain?
As I would say, until we get to a point where funding prohibits it and we have to go elsewhere to seek additional funding, our plan is to remove as many as we can.
Okay, I'll take Councillor Widdowson on this and then come to the executive member.
It's on the list of things, so it's the real-time information. So on the real-time information on the buses, just how do we follow up? There's two questions we've got. The one in Weldrake, I know isn't giving real-time information. It's just giving the standard timetable. And I know that Councillor Vassey has chased for about 6 or 7 months and nothing's changed. And the one in my mind is the ones on the Wilberforce by Tesco, Askham Bar. The 2 bus stops there, the Wilberforce, are for the partially sighted, and they don't speak to you, and we've chased that for a couple of years and nothing's happened. So how do we most effectively chase on that without bogging everybody down in the detail? Is it down to what Councillor Fenton said? How do you want us to do that?
I can definitely take those two specific issues away and discuss with colleagues in that team. I think where we can certainly help is sort of broadcasting what a forward programme of real-time information looks like in more detail, rather than just coming to you saying we've done 5 more. We could get the information as to what areas are being tackled and in what order.
That'd be perfect, and I'll come back to that after Councillor Avelius.
Just really quickly back on the barriers. Part of the approach has been to look at routes, continuous routes. So remove barriers so that you have continuous routes without barriers rather than dotted around the city. And also we're doing, University of Westminster wanted to come and do a study on the impact of barrier removal, and that's ongoing at the moment, where they're camera monitoring some barriers for a year beforehand and a year afterwards, to understand the impact, both in terms of any increases in antisocial behaviour and whether there's any change in the people who are using them, in terms of, do we start to see more cargo cycles, wheelchair users, whatever. So that is partway through that study at the moment, but that will also help to inform how, where and when we remove barriers.
That sounds really positive. Thank you, Councillor Ravelius. I think we move to the ask of this committee, which is to consider the format and frequency of future updates. With what you've just mentioned about, and what Councillor Ravelius has just mentioned as well, with the studies that are taking place and your scoring around what you'd like to achieve and how you are prioritising, I think that is what the committee would like to see further, when this item would be timely to come back. I'm not sure, maybe 6 months or so, whenever works with the team, but it is that additional detail on those items, like a bit more information about freight, as Councillor Fenton said, and sort of background information to how you are identifying the barriers for removal and how you score them, details of the study with the University of Westminster, and also from my perspective, how you're prioritising the active travel programme, which is mentioned at bullet point number 1 under that section. But for me and for many members, I'm sure, have got schemes that they either have in their ward or feel a high priority. It'd be good to understand the rationale of the council on working that out, and how it could be delivered, how and when. Does that sound about right? Councillor Widdowson, and then Healy.
Would it be possible to add in, looking back in, you said it's 3 months, it's out for tender, so I'm guessing 3 months after that, 6 months, that Councillor Ravelius, the movement in place will be at a stage where it could be reviewed, because I think that would be really important. It's mentioned in a significant number of documents.
Councillor Ravelius.
Yeah, I meant to say when we were talking about the movement in place that there are some elements of it which we would definitely want to bring forward faster, and that's part of the request of the contract, such as a highway design guide. So we desperately need a highway design guide for the city, and that will be an early element. So it would be a very good idea when we come back with another report on progress to, at that point, lay out where we are and expectations and timelines with the movement in place plan, because there will be different elements that come forward earlier and later.
Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Chair. I believe we discussed in a planning session that it would be very useful if, in the journey of the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority Local Transport Plan, we were to ask them to give the same presentation that they're likely to give to the Combined Authority Scrutiny Committee, to give that to us, so as a committee we could respond to that consultation as opposed to political groups or individual members.
Yeah, I think we have discussed that, and I think it's a fair request. I think we'll have to go away, talk to the combined authority about that. But I think it's a fair request, yeah. It will be dealt with at combined authority level, so members round this table could contribute in that way, but let us speak to them and see about including it here for our eyes and for detailed discussion on the City of York local authority area elements. Is that okay? We'll take that away. Is that, yes, Joshua?
Apologies. I just wanted to add as well. I think it is listed in the update that as we get to the point which our capital programme for 26-27 and beyond is approved, we are planning on taking an executive report that will give the detail of more scheme by scheme, programme by programme. As I appreciate that's what you're all wanting to see. Unfortunately, we're not at that stage yet with the programme, but that will be forthcoming in summer this year, I believe, is what we're aiming for.
Okay, feeds us nicely onto our next agenda item where we can note these things and then try to work with officers to schedule Scrutiny's agenda. If that's it from everybody on local transport strategy, we'll move on and say thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, couple of bits. We move to the work plan. Which is agenda item 7. Depends which set of papers you've got, but mine's 33 here. I should note at this stage, I don't know who received the email because it came maybe just an hour before this meeting started, but it was from Councillor Stewart with the suggestion of a task and finish group looking at section 106 agreements. If you cast your minds back to the last full council, that is the motion that agreed to set up a cross-party group. So I think unless anybody's got a burning desire to be part of that and will stick their arm in the air right now, I would ask that we note that as a committee and we can respond to Councillor Stewart on that in time. And he has filled in one of those pro forma documents that detail what he's after. We can share that round with the committee and then look for members that are interested. So we'll definitely put that on the next agenda item because we will resolve it by then. You definitely want an answer. So that needs fixing. With the rest of the work plan, it's all detailed in here. I should say that myself and Councillor Healy as Vice Chair have been through all the items that were on our list as overhanging, and we've tried to dot them in for the rest of this committee's lifespan before the next local elections. So,
Might jump in.
James, you are always welcome to jump in.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to say we've sort of been part of that discussion with the Chair and the Vice Chair. I'm hoping we'll be in a position to, having done a bit of chasing on some of those items, at the next meeting of the committee, which will be the committee's last of this fiscal year. If we have a draft work plan that sets out some of those remaining items, you know, with suggested slots for them for the upcoming year. Obviously leaving some room as usual for things that get added during the course of the year, but yeah, I think sort of Chair and the Vice Chair had sort of set out, you know, where they'd like some of those things to go. So I'll do some more following up on that. As I say, you'll hopefully have you know, a draft for your consideration of the next.
I think that's, yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable. Thank you for your work on that, James. So that's our assurance that everything that is listed here, we have earmarked. So I don't think there's any need to go through that right now. You'll get the full list at the next committee meeting and how it is proposed to be allocated for the rest of the rest of our time. The only thing to add is what we've just discussed now. And I think the way that we should do it, James, is that we just add it to the unallocated list, and then myself and Vice Chair will work out how that can theme in with what that year-long work plan proposes and what officers feel is correct, and that's movement and place, including the highway design guide and the capital programme, the highways capital programme. It was the active travel capital programme that Joshua was referring to, but I would leave it wider and just keep it a transport capital programme. Potentially with active travel in the brackets, because we definitely need that as a specific. Does that make sense? Is everybody happy? Councillor Fenton.
Briefly, I think we need to be mindful that when we're getting things to scrutiny, it's always good if we can find what's the question we're being asked. So yes, we might want assurance that active travel is being hardwired into schemes as they're being developed. But it's always kind of looking, and I'm not saying officers wouldn't say, oh, we could get the committee's views on X, Y, and Z, but I'm sure you will do this anyway. But keep asking the questions in terms of where can, are there any issues that you're kind of considering amongst officers that scrutiny can help with? So yeah, just keep pushing that, just so we don't fall back into kind of, this is really interesting. Thank you for briefing us, because that's what we're trying to get away from.
That is a really important point that you remind me of, and something I can commit to as chair, and I'm going to drag Vice Chair Councillor Healy into it. It's a really good idea to meet with the directors of service across the portfolios that are covered by this committee, and so we will do that before the next meeting, should availability allow. Councillor Healy, we'll get those meetings scheduled so that we can grill them on what we want as a committee over the next 12 months and what they expect their directorates to be delivering, so that we can work with them on pulling that in front of this committee. Yeah. So look out for that email. It's Easter though. Oh, the children. 2 weeks. Oh, well, okay, we'll find a time. Right. I think that's everybody done. I asked if everybody was happy. I got nods, and then Councillor Fenton. Yeah. I'm going to close this meeting and say thank you everybody for your contributions and your time, and much appreciated. We had a good discussion, so thank you all. Thank you, any members of the public still watching.